Hello on this end of April tour of my gardens and garden rooms. It is pretty cold out. It's only about 40 degrees. We've been having snow on and off. The flowers are too cold to open up in most cases. I don't know if I'll see any bees out there, but let's take a look at this courtyard area. So this area we recently redid this fence. These are grapevines growing on this fence. We moved it out as I move into what I refer to as the courtyard or the pavilion area. You can see the patch here where it's kind of brown, where I'm reviving this area. That's where the grapevines were. And last year I actually planted the privet hedge going around. I have a separate video on how to plant privet hedge. You can check that out. And these are doing pretty good. They all have life coming. They're all showing nice and green, and they're coming, which is nice to see. And this side here I planted at the beginning of summer, and the interesting thing is when I took the cuttings, or when I pruned it, then I had a lot of growth shoot up here. I mean, you have all of this was new growth at the end of summer, so it was probably pruned like August, and then it shot up huge, and then this wood didn't want to come back quite so fast. It's alive. You can see there's buds on it, but it just didn't want to come back as nice as the older wood. So take note on when you're taking your cuttings, I guess. As long as it's alive, that's all I really care. But you'll see in between these privet, I put in these alliums all the way along here, so that we'll be having some spring color coming. And then on the outside of the pavilion area and most of the areas, I have these emerald arborvitae hedges, and they're just really nice because it kind of gives it like a pillar effect. And my goal in the end, if you haven't seen my other videos, is to trim up these privet hedges so there'd be a proper English hedge. And it is probably going to take about 3 years to get there. These grow pretty fast, so I'm really looking forward to that. The other thing that I'm going to be doing this year is I am going to be decorating, I consider this my husband's area, with some plants. He usually likes to have some pretty colorful flowers, either red or orange or tropical looking. This may be an area where I bring my bromeliads out of the house. I did that last year. That worked pretty well. Also, if I go in here, you can see where we've got this homemade smoker that my husband made. And that's going to be moving to an area in the back of our property. And then this is our grill area for right now. But what my husband's going to do is build an actual pizza oven or a bread oven in this area. So that's going to be one of our fun projects for this year. We probably won't even get that started till the end of May because, again, it's still pretty cold here. As I continue my walkthrough, we come upon my vegetable garden area. And the grass in this area was once, it looks rough because it was once a raspberry patch. And I took that out 3 years ago. I took it out. And I'm still trying to get it to heal. So every year it's looking better. On the outside edge of my vegetable garden, I have this rose area. We call this Rose Alley. So when the roses are in bloom, we walk down and kind of enjoy this area. Sometimes we'll move a table and chairs out into this old raspberry area, and we'll sit and have a glass of wine or a cocktail and just be out where we can actually smell the roses. I still have some garden cleanup to do. I grew cucumbers on there last year, and I still have some cleanup to do. I think most of the roses are alive. I'm seeing green on most of them. I still have to rake out some of this other stuff that blows in off the cornfield. Just clean it up, but it looks better than it did, I think, on the last tour. It was still kind of frozen. And I do believe every one of them is alive. Lots of different varieties. I have some hybrid teas, and I have a lot of climbing roses. And the goal is to get the roses to grow up on the fence. As I come around to the back of the garden area, this is where I have some asparagus I still need to clean off. I got strawberries that are rambling on the ground there, which is not a problem. And then this area here is my rhubarb. The fun fact about this rhubarb is this rhubarb actually came from my great-grandfather's farm. It was passed on through the family, and it's probably, the mother plant was probably well over 100 years old, which is just kind of a fun fact, I know, for my children to know that this came from their great-great-grandfather's farm. And at the end of that line, I've got my little composter there. As we make our way back in, we're going to go into the garden. So I cleaned the front of the garden off when we had that heat wave a couple weeks ago. And I got some of the old stuff. I'll have cosmos and things like that. Annuals growing here. I do have clematis on the front. That, you know, they're still dormant. Then I have this patio area out front, which I will deck out with a lot of different containers and just make it look really nice. I usually use annuals to dress it up. I got Mr. Toad out of the storage shed. He's just hanging out there in the container for right now. And then I'll hang some really nice garden ornaments on the fence. So as we go in to the garden, it's just a simple gate my husband made for me. My main goal is to keep the bunnies out. I still have this area that needs to be cleaned. I got to clean up all these containers. And what I end up doing is I end up taking the dry parts and they'll go to the compost bin. And then I will rake in some new composted manure. These beds were filled with 100% composted manure that I get in bulk and shovel it by the pickup load. And I'll shove it into the back of a lawn cart and fill it in buckets, and then by hand I'll bring it in. When I first moved into the garden 3 years ago, this nursery table or this nursery bench setup was not here. My husband put this in for me just last year. Right now I have my tulips that I had in these nest boxes over the winter, just kind of hanging out and drying out so that they don't rot on me. And you can see that they're really starting to come along. If you look at some of my other videos, I got tulips in here and some daffodils, which are still not, I don't think I have any daffodils coming, but a lot of tulips. Seeing some tulips here coming. Some hyacinths coming. And then these are my apple trees that the bunnies came in and chewed the daylights out of those. These were Honeycrisp apple trees, and I'm going to try to see what I can do to get them to survive. I doubt they're going to make it, but we will try. They're still alive because these are bending. In a lot of cases, you can see there's green there. If that will focus, there's green right there, which means it's still alive. But what's got to happen in order for me to take cuttings on these branches is I have to see that the sugars get up to make these buds swell, so I know that it's going to be viable. Otherwise, what I'll probably end up doing is I'll end up going in here and I'll cut this off because this is protected, and then it'll start rebranching because the bottom part of the tree is alive, but this top part is probably not going to make it. And then along here in some of these containers, some of these fenced areas, and it's probably easier to see it here, I actually have blueberry bushes in here. And I've learned the hard way that during the winter I've got to put fencing around it like this to try to keep the bunnies off, or they've shredded them to the ground more than once on me, even with the garden fence. So, and then this area here is my strawberry bed, and I store my cages in here until I can get out here and get them cleaned off. I just haven't got it done yet. And then this area here, this little pedestal area, this is where Sophie, my garden statue, will come and watch over us. We keep her in the basement for the winter so she doesn't crack and disintegrate from the cold. And I did a short video on this area. This is my asparagus bed. And I cleaned that off just recently. And then I have some fresh chives, which I've been using in some of my dishes. So it's pretty good to have on hand. I got some random garbage that I need to get cleaned out of here. Let it get a little bit messier than I would have liked. This area here has, or this bin has garlic in it that I put in last year. Thought it was dead, but obviously it's coming along, so I'm pretty excited about that. This little garden bed here has all of my shrubs that I was propagating, little trees and shrubs and stuff, and I'll probably do a separate video just kind of detailing that. You can go into my propagation playlist and see when I would have put these in here, maybe October of last year. And I'm going to leave them tucked in here until I'm really ready to use this bed so that they can continue to root and they'll do better when I transplant them. As I continue around here, we can look at some more of these flowers. You got tulips in here and some daffodils. Again, daffodils seem to be a little bit behind. And then with some alliums. And my hope is to put these by the front deck. My husband's in the process of building a platform for me. The other thing that I'm going to do, last year I put this little hanging wall in here and I put little plants in that, and I think what I want to try to do is put strawberries in there to see if I can get some strawberry starts from some of the runners to go, and then I'll make another or a new strawberry bed. My strawberry bed is kind of at year 3, which is usually around the time that it's just time to refresh it. This bed is the same. It's got little shrubs I was overwintering and some trees. I actually have 50 more white pine trees coming from the extension center. I got to pick those up first week of May, and more blueberries. So that'll be fun. I'll have to get those and get them all potted up. Continuing my garden tour with the wind. Hopefully it doesn't distract too much, but come around to my woodland garden area, which is really starting to come on now. I think we're about maybe 30% of the daffodils are in bloom, which is really kind of lovely. If this is the first time you watch this is a brand new bed I put in last year. So the base of this is 100% composted manure, and then maybe about 4 to 6 inches of that, because the soil underneath, the base soil, was 100% sand. It was really bad. So I decided to mend it. And then I came in and I planted 200 daffodils, or 200 or 300, I can't remember how many, but it was a lot. And it was just a couple different varieties of yellow daffodils. They stuck in the ground so nice. When you start a new bed, that's a perfect time to put spring bulbs in, because it's really easy to just press them in the ground. Come down around the corner. And the trees that are around this are sumac, or scrub trees, that I got from my father's property years ago. And I got them for the purpose of holding the soil in place, because like I said, this is like a sandy hill where we got some wash. I'll take you and show you that too. So the other thing that I have in here where you see these sticks is I have planted I put some other plants in here. Here you can see some irises that I planted in there, and then I have some ferns planted along the edge, and down the middle I've got some Empress Wu hostas, and so this will fill in and be just really, really nice. So as I pan out here, you can see where we're starting to have some wash, where this soil is really bad and it's washing, really sandy. Not good at all. And that was underneath this whole area. So I am going to give you a look . And this is just a little peach tree that I planted last year. It's a contender peach, which can grow in my zone. I am in zone 4 by Minneapolis. And I didn't even realize you could grow peaches up here, but you can. So I'm anxious to see how this goes. I need to take some of this sod out and widen the circle around it. I put some more protection around it so that the deer and bunnies don't devastate it. Here's the Dutch garden. It's been through a lot this spring with all the snow. We get snow every other day for the last 2 weeks. It actually started out really good. We had like 80-degree weather for a week straight, and it really brought on all the growth really fast. But I was so worried. But spring bulbs are pretty tolerant of the cold weather, not so tolerant of hot weather if you live in the south. So as we take a walk down the path here, you could see that some of the bulbs I had on this side are starting to come up. I have alliums in here and some lily tulips on both sides of the path. And we'll see the daffodils are just starting to come in. They're starting to pop. Probably because it's about 45 degrees right now. It's still very cold, but they're starting to pop. They should come out nice in the next few days. And then all of my Daffodils I planted by seed are finally starting to come up. So they tend to be pretty hardy. This variety is called Fantasia of a Daffodil. And then the other green in there, that's an Allium. So as we take a walk down the path, see there's bunches of tulips, and I have some other perennials that are coming. Got a lot more things coming up. I have some bee balm. I have some bee balm here that I planted last year, right in here. It's starting to come up. And I have more hyacinths coming as well. So this should be really nice. We keep coming down the path. See what else is coming. Oh yeah, on the edge I've got my irises. On the edge over here, over on the far edge. Those are irises that are coming. And for the most part, I've only had a little bit of deer damage. So if we look at it right here, you can see this one has been nibbled down. That's by a deer. And so then I went and got some Repelsol and sprinkled it. And it works pretty good. Really nice bunch of red tulips. Stripe on them. What these clumps are right here, I can zoom in. This is actually Dame's Rocket, which is a wildflower native to our area. And we happened to dig some up and move it into the garden so I could control it. So it's been a little over a week since my last tour. You can see that there's a lot more growth that's been put on by the spring bulbs. I had somebody question why I had a meandering path going through the garden rather than just having a straight path, thinking that people wouldn't follow the path. Well, the point of the path is to take pause and to enjoy the garden as you're walking through it. And then I could section it up. Every section of this garden has a different grouping of flowers, a different meaning. This section, for example, is almost all purple for one of my daughters and the flowers that she loved as a child. And I got sections for my husband and just different sections laid out, which makes it special for us. And again, this is a private garden. This is not something people tour, unless it's friends and family that come over. So I'm usually giving the tours. This was an interesting one for me. So this is a poppy. Just a regular old poppy that I grew last year, an oriental one. from seed. And the interesting thing about this is they say you're not supposed to grow them and transplant them, but that's exactly what I did. The funny thing is when I transplanted it, it died back and I thought it was gone, which is why I put some stakes in there. And then at the very end, 6 weeks after, because it's shocked back from moving it because it's got a long taproot, then it came back up. So I got 2 of them, one there and one there. And these will fill this whole area. They're really big. Here is another bunch of daffodils and tulips, and they're supposed to be orange, and they're not. They're looking kind of yellow. So I don't know if that is in result to the cold weather or a nutritional imbalance, or if I just got to be patient and they will turn from yellow to orange. So I don't know why, but that is going to be a stunning display when it comes. And I've got different daylilies and stuff that are coming in here. This is another bunch of tulips that the deer had come through and nibbled on, but they didn't hurt them. They just ate the outer leaves. So when I see that, I right away will sprinkle the repels all on the ground, which smells like garlic. I think it's got coyote urine in it too. So it's kind of an organic deterrent. Probably cayenne pepper, things like that. And it works pretty good. And it's more or less to train the deer to stay away. And the bunnies. Here is a bunch of, it's a mixed bunch of flowers. It's got some hyacinths of different colors coming and some mixed tulips. I don't even remember what color they are. But those are coming along. And then here I've got my Russian sage, which always comes late. I usually don't see new growth on that until almost June in this zone. And again, coming to this area is my area where I had a bunch of tulips. I believe they're the parrot tulip varieties. And then I've got a lot of tall garden phlox that'll be coming. I have different flowers all tucked in here. And when the tulips that I showed you in the garden are done, from my porch display, I will end up putting those in here and tucking it in where I have nothing right now. Next year this will be full of tulips coming up, is my goal. So we'll turn around and give another look at this garden. And my husband and I discussed putting an arbor at this opening so you walk through it to enter the garden. But I decided against it because it'll block my view from the house, and I like to be able to see my gardens from different venue points within the house. So again, this is the Dutch garden. This is the front area, entryway of my house, and it needs a lot of work. I have knocked down the hydrangeas. This is an Annabelle hydrangea, which is quite beautiful. It's white, and I've knocked all of that down for now. And that's all I need to do. It will fill in around. You won't see those stumps. You don't have to go all the way down. So if you're within a foot, that's good enough. And then I have some little lily tulips that I have planted in here. And they're coming along. They just started poking their heads up. I've got a clematis here on the end. Right there, it's a clematis. And then I have, these are actually Korean lilacs that I decided to do a hard prune. I don't expect to get any blooms on them this year, which is okay. They're starting to get a little big for the area, and I wanted them to be a little bit better kept. This area right here is a little shade type of garden, and I am going to take this out this year, most of it, and I'm going to redo it. It is full of hostas. You can't see it because they're still sleeping, but it's just too much and I need to break them apart. So I'm going to dig this out. It's one of my projects. And I got some new window boxes I'll be planting up too when it gets a little bit warmer. This area is what I refer to as my fairy garden because I'm going to have some fairy statues kind of throughout. It's more of a whimsical kind of feel. You can see the tree with the branches coming down. It'll be really nice. Got a lot of bunny damage. I have these boxwoods had winter burn. I gotta trim those down. Not happy about that. Didn't know that was gonna happen. I'm new to boxwood, so I wouldn't suggest a zone for a gardener, especially if you're new and you're looking. I would not get these. These are wintergreen boxwood. That should not have done that. So I will not get that again. I'll have to switch it to something else. I don't know which. And then I've got some different shrubs that I mentioned before the bunnies had chewed. Looks like I'm getting some budding coming on them. It's hard to tell. And I have a different hydrangea here. It's called Summer Crush. Hoping that comes back. Bunnies chewing those kind of things down should never kill them. It should actually make them purr up. Bunnies chewing on shrubs should actually help them become even bigger, because it'll encourage them to branch out. So this is a look at where we're at this week anyway with the fairy garden tulips. It should be almost all white with some red. We'll see if it comes up the way it's supposed to. And then I'm going to put a bunch of pots in here and like containers, and I'll fill the containers so I can switch them out. And I'll have some fairy statues. And I have the garden set up just like I have the Dutch garden set up with an area to walk through, and I have that as well to encourage people to walk into the garden areas. And I have a little garden bench here. And I've planted some different tulips and some alliums going around this area, which are just starting to come up. And to give you an idea of the perspective, if I have a seat here and I look up into the tree, it's just really kind of nice and whimsical. It's kind of a magical place to sit. My husband and I will do a yard walk usually every day, and we stop at each area and just take a moment to enjoy it. So this area of the yard, I put in a dry creek bed, oh gosh, more than 10 years ago when we moved in, to give it kind of a wandering, woodlandy kind of feel. And so we hauled all of these fieldstones in. I think it was like 8 yards of fieldstone. It was a lot of work hauling them in and getting them in there. And then I'm working on, this is my lavender bed, and I'm working on getting it revitalized. So I've got some lavender coming, and I have some in my vegetable garden that I have in the nursery, but you can see it's starting to come a little bit. But lavender comes really, really late here. This is alive. I won't see it really for another, I bet you till end of May at the soonest, maybe even early June before I'm going to see it. Then we're going to go off this way, and we're going to look at the lilacs. So I have a full line here of old-fashioned lilacs, and they are just starting to bud out. So that's really always fun to see. And usually by the last week of May, they're in full bloom. You can see in some cases they are coming really slow. You can see them. If that focuses in, you can see that they're trying to pop out. So when we do our tour next week, if Mother Nature behaves herself, maybe we'll have some more flower formation on these. And they're going to be just lovely. I love the scent of lilacs. It's always a great cut flower arrangement that you can bring in your house. Let's see if we got any more I can look at. I don't know if it's going to focus or not. Hopefully it does. So I have a full line, as you can see as I pan out, going all the way down to the edge. And we always look forward to them every year. One of the keys if you want to grow lilac is to make sure you do not mow around them. I'll show you why as I walk down the path here. If you want your old-fashioned lilacs to propagate, then you cannot mow underneath them because the little roots will come up and you won't see the fact that you have other trees coming. This is how they come up. So you'll also see the buds are only at the top. So if I wanted to do a shear on these for next year, I would have more formation happen down below. But you could also dig these new ones up, these little ones, and you could actually put them in a different area of your yard. Old-fashioned lilacs grow kind of slow. These have been here for like 12 years. And this is, oh gosh, they got to be 7 feet tall. But they don't grow that wide. They have to, through root propagation or through runners like this. As we continue to walk through here, you will see all of the little runners that kind of come with it. In this area here, you can see there's just tons of little baby lilacs that could be dug out and relocated, but my husband didn't want me to do that, so I didn't. Over here is my Forsythia. I got it. It was just, I don't know if it was like a free shrub I got one year, and I didn't know what to do with it. So I threw it in here, and it's still not blooming. It's starting to get some greenery on it, but yeah, this is supposed to be yellow. I don't know if it's done a whole lot, but it's just to kind of cover up this electrical box on this side anyway, so I don't have to look at it. And as I take you this way and we look down through the trees, this is an area we call Forest Hank. I named it after my father. We had originally got the spruce trees from my dad 12 years ago. They were only like 18 inches tall, and now they are, oh gosh, I bet they're 20 to 30 feet tall. They're huge. So it's just a nice little woodland area I created. And I'm thinking about putting in some raised beds in between. The ground here is pretty bad, so amending the soil will be good for them. And then maybe sticking some hostas in here, because I do need a place to put them. Continuing on our tour, these are my apple trees. There's an apple tree. There's an apple tree here and the one down there. These are the only two trees that were on the property when we got it 13 years ago. Everything else that you see are trees that we planted, my husband and I. So the apples are trying to come along. This is a Haralson variety, and I'm not seeing a lot of, I don't know if this is going to focus or not. This is a Haralson variety. There we go. And I'm not seeing a lot of bud formation on this one yet. This is the last one to pick. It makes wonderful pies. And I didn't get enough pruning done on them. Any of you arborists out there looking at this scoffing at my lack of pruning, I know. I just haven't gotten to it. But every one of these should be a fruit spur. You can see how it looks kind of rough. And then we'll watch for the tent caterpillars if they come, and we'll come and pull them off by hand and put them in soapy water. Yeah, I don't think they're going to show up so well. We'll go down and look at the other one. This is a row of spruce trees that I got from an extension service. This is the second time I've planted here. The first ones did not go. I tried planting them too early. And that was a transplant. So you don't want to be moving spruce trees or pine trees around when they're in a bud break stage. So it's really too hard on them. This is a really good example of a fruit spur. You can see how chattery it looks, how shingled the bark looks. That's a fruit spur. And I think this one here is also a fruit spur. So we got a few fruit spurs on this. For people that don't know, Apple trees are mostly biennial in nature, where you only get bumper crop every other year. So this is our year to have a bumper crop of apples. This is my deck project for the year. I'm having my husband put a full-size steps across the front of this, and I'm going to use it as a display bed for my container garden, and we might do one on the side as well. And I just started purchasing some nice containers to put on top. We got a bird bath. The top over there is taken off because we had too cold of weather and it started freezing the water that was in there. But I got a lot of cleanup to do here yet, and we're going to do some fun projects on this, and we're going to do a lot of fun projects in this area coming up this year, so I'm pretty excited. He took the temporary steps that we actually had in the front and he moved them over here for me for right now. If you enjoyed this tour, please give us a thumbs up so YouTube knows to share this content with others. Also check my playlist of garden tours down in the description. Thanks for stopping by. Have a great day.